What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast, Badlands. I'm your host, Joe Caporoso, joined by Will Parkinson. It is late Tuesday night. The New York Jets are yet to hire Aaron Glenn and Lance Newmark, something that seems to be happening. It seems like it was on track to happen maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow morning. Now it sounds like Aaron Glenn is going to fly out of Florham Park on Woody Johnson's plane. Jets gave a meaningful offer. This is due to the reporting out there. He's considering different staff members to hire. The Jets have made calls to other candidates that their search is likely over. However, there is still a chance he could interview with the Saints. There's some weather issues down in New Orleans. So it feels like we were originally going to record this, planning to record this as the emergency pod. That feels a touch premature. So it's more of the late night waiting game. Where exactly are we at in the process pod? Could very well be back 12 hours from now recording an emergency pod. That might take until Thursday night. Will, where's your head at right now? I will also say it feels weird saying Lance Newmark's name, even after the 2 episodes of the Newmark Files, but let's focus this mostly on Aaron Glenn because that is where the talk is today and in terms of landing this guy as their head coach. So where are you at right now mentally?
Joe, do you not feel like Lance Newmark looks like Matt Rule?
There's a little bit there. I've heard he looks a little bit like a babyface Rex Ryan. I've heard somebody looks a little like a hybrid of McCagnon and Rex Ryan. Now we got Matt Rule. Of course, we said he looks like the
most generic 50-year-old white dude you've ever seen.
Yeah, that was the creative GM in Madden. That's where my comment came from. And I literally, there was a part of me in my brain as I typed that. I was like, you shouldn't have typed that because now this guy is going to be in your life going forward. So here we are. But we're not talking. Listen, Connor has dropped 2/3 of the trilogy on Newmark. We're going to have plenty more to talk about with him, I am sure, unless this doesn't happen over the next day or so. AG, my concern is, listen, I've liked Aaron Glenn for a long time as the lead candidate. So have you, so have Connor, so have a lot of people. He's kind of been the presumed favorite since like week 15, I feel like.
Yeah.
What worries me, because he's not Vince Lombardi, he's not a perfect candidate. It's not that there's like no one else out there to hire that's interesting. It's just that I worry when the Jets get knocked to a plan B at the last second that they just turn around and like hire Arthur Smith and we lose our minds. But we're getting out over our skis. What to your understanding, what happened today and where are we at in this process? And is it panic time for Jet fans listening to this at 10:15 on Tuesday night?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One, I feel like they've had two plans. It feels like from week 7. Yeah, like they've had two. It's been like Vrabel was obviously plan A, and Glenn was plan 1B. They kind of got the same treatment. Got to pick your pick your GM. You're gonna get to pick your staff. We're gonna obsess over you. We're gonna show you the royal treatment. Look, I think missing on Vrabel was fine because I think in reality, the second that Mayo got fired, as we know, like I think the Jets even understood like it's probably over. And even at the time, I was like, hey, like make a final push, at least make Kraft spend more than he wants to. But you felt like it was over, and Glenn was the next guy. Problem is like the Jets basically just spent the last 10 days interviewing every motherfucker on the planet because they were like, can someone else wow us? That's not Aaron Glenn. Can someone change our mind? Like we know we want Aaron, but is there somebody else out there? Maybe it's a candidate we don't know about. Maybe it's a candidate we were expecting was a second time that we refresh ourselves. And no one did that. There's other people that interviewed well, but most people they're not better than the guy we want. They've shown full ass over the last 24 hours specifically where they've not interviewed a single second time, a GM for a second interview, not another head coach. There's still other openings, and yes, Ben Johnson going to the Bears helped them in terms of Lance Newmark, who was going to attach himself to Ben Johnson, is attaching himself to Aaron Glenn. I feel like the one issue that they're going to be run into here is that there is a clear timetable. They have 48 hours essentially before Glenn gets on a plane to New Orleans. There actually is legit snow. Like I know people thought that was a hoax. There is like my brother's in Mobile right now. Like there's 8 inches of snow. It's the most snow they've had since 1850. They have I think a 12-hour window here to kind of hammer out some, hey, I'm going home to get my family. I'm going to come back and tell you that I have your plane and I want another extra year on my deal. I want $3 to $4 million more of spending money for my assistant coach budget. I need $2 million for my analytical budget. We need to bring in 2 guys, and we have to spend this amount of money on AWS and whatever. I think like Glenn has, kind of shown his cards a little bit too. New Orleans has always been a player in this thing, but he took the Jets interview first. I don't think that's by mistake. He gets to go with his own GM. There's very different infrastructure there. It's obviously a better roster and things like that. So tour the facility, you meet with people, you meet with some of the front office staff. Hey, hey, how are you? This is whatever. There's a lot of pleasantries and kind of BS, but if Glenn's already got a staff and plan in place, Garofalo's tweet to me was the most impactful this morning, that staff members that Glenn was recruiting, the understanding was he's going to be the Jets' next head coach.
Yeah.
We saw this with Saleh in 21. So I'm not worried yet. If you tell me at noon tomorrow we don't have a single update, now we're going to start to be like, okay, Friday presser might be out, which means it's really not going to happen until Monday, which would mean he's probably going to interview in New Orleans. And this isn't the Saleh going to Philly thing from 2021, where Philly was in a very different situation in 2021. They were still obviously a very well-respected franchise, but they were in a little bit of like a kind of a changing of the guard a bit. This is like, and he was going in 30 minutes down the road to an organization he had no ties to. This is Glenn going to the one other place that he has legit ties to the owner, legit ties to the GM, some of the coaching staff there. So I'm not worried yet. I don't think there's a reason to be worried. Like the Jets have, if Schultz is to be believed on this tweet, they made a significant offer. He's on Woody's plane. Like he's pulling staff together. That to me all feels like, hey, it's a formality of, Joe, I don't know if the one other thing I thought about, is there a chance that this is all because of offset years and money? Because we've seen it with draft picks, and he just fired Saleh early. He's had to fire the guys early. Is there a chance there's just like some language in different contracts of like, what are we doing here type of stuff? Like that's almost what it feels like. It's over dumb, like little things that need to be like, let's sleep on this, touch base in the morning. You verbally accept. We get the tweet from Woody from his account and Schefter and Rappaport and everybody else. Yeah, Friday presser. That's still what I feel like is the most likely.
That wouldn't shock me. I mean, it's the last moments here where you're trying to squeeze leverage, and every dollar counts. Every little detail on the contract counts. Most guys only get one chance for this type of first-time contract. So I think they know at this stage that the Jets badly want him. They don't want to take the hit of losing him at the last second. So they're on his plane. Why not take another night? Worst case, again, you're flying back with your family. You're setting up for a weekend press conference. Why not press a little bit and see if you could squeeze a little more? I mean, they're very strategically getting it out there that a staff is starting to come together. We're hearing about Mark Brunell as the potential offensive coordinator, former Jet great, of course. Heard about Mike Westhoff in Schultz's tweet, who's like 77, but a legend who we all love and would love to have his voice around the building if his health is permitting that. Brunell wasn't a surprising name. He's one of the one that's been rumored for offensive coordinator. There'll be a couple others that get thrown around, some more exciting than others. We've heard Steve Wilkes for defensive coordinator, and that tweet also reiterated that he wants an experienced guy. And I think good that he's hiring an experienced defensive coordinator so he can focus on being the head coach, not the defensive coordinator and defensive play caller. So we have some rumblings and feel of what the staff could be. Brunell, I think he's an interesting name. It makes sense he would come from Detroit. What do you think of some of the other names that have been thrown out at offensive coordinator? That's where everyone's focus is going to go. No one's going to stress on the defensive hires. It's going to be the offensive hires.
As it should be. At the end of the day, I agree with you. I think Glenn being his whole, I tweeted this before, and, of course, some people just don't want Aaron Glenn for a multitude of reasons, and I get it. His appeal is not that he's like the most brilliant defensive innovator. He's not Vic Fangio with the Broncos. Like, he's a good defensive coordinator. Like, he is. He had they were seventh in, defensive, total defense this year with all the injuries. He's developed players. They've, the Kirby Josephs of the world, Nathan Hutchinson's, all these guys, like he's developed them. They've been good at times. He put Sam Darnold back in the Jets, back in Jets mode, which was sad for me to see, but
yep.
He broke Sam a little bit, but like, I think he's a good defensive, play caller and stuff like that. He's, runs a lot. He runs a lot more man. We're going to see a lot more sauce. We would see a lot more sauce in Michael Carter and these guys. And I can tell you they would be very excited to have, in there and Glenn here and be able to be like, hey, let's, call some more turnovers. The Jets would be more high variance on defense under Glenn, which I think you and Connor and the rest of us would be kind of excited about. Like,
yes,
hey, they might give up more points, but they actually might turn the football over.
Some plays, yeah.
So, Calvin Shepard's one name that could be potentially a DC. I think Steve Wilkes, Connor Hughes mentioned him today. That would be a home run to me.
Yeah,
it's a nice Niners are third total defense. He has had coaching experience. He doesn't have a big ego. There's not going to be he's just like, I'm going to take care of the defense. I got you. Similar front. They'll just be more aggressive and run more man. When it comes to the offensive side of the ball, a few names interest me and a few, please no. Scott Turner, no, absolutely not. That is nightmare fuel. If I've ever seen one, I am so good off of Scott Turner being a name. Now shift to Clint Kubiak. Now we're having a much different conversation. That'd be a fantastic hire. Look, he's not going to be New Orleans is likely going to hire McCarthy or Joe Brady. Although Darren Rizzi's somehow getting a lot of juice there. I mean, good for him. I love him as the Jets special teams coach. Proud of Bergen Catholic. Recruited the McCourties at Rutgers. Like, bring home all the Jersey guys. But yeah, like if that's gonna be the case, Kubiak and Hank Fraley, who's the other kind of more popular name from the Lions staff, those are one of those guys is gonna get the Seahawks job. And I know our good buddy Shriggs, kind of. Look, if one of the Jets ends up with one of those guys, I'd be perfectly happy with it. The other name you mentioned there is Brunell, and Brunell's very interesting from the aspect of if you just blank resume it, and him and McCown, isn't he kind of just the exact same guy as McCown in terms of has done the mentorship? He was really beloved when he was here. He was actually a part of a good Jets team. He was actually, he's obviously a way better player than Josh ever was, all due respect. He was a Pro Bowl level player, et cetera. And he's been coaching longer in a system that would he run in a version of the Ben Johnson system here with the Jets. And is that exciting for a guy like Brees and Garrett? He hasn't called plays, so it would be potentially a very up and down next year where it's hey, sometimes very LaFleur-like in a sense, whereas some weeks we felt really good about it, some weeks we didn't. But I would think if the Jets do draft their young quarterback in 26, likely based on this class, Brunell's done the mentoring. I don't think he's going to be rushing to be a head coach. He's kind of doing the slow, if it happens, it happens. But I made a lot of money as a player. I'm not rushing to just take a job. He might be a really good option for a young quarterback. So it seems like most of the names we've heard connected to Aaron Glenn are kind of exciting. That's part of him building a staff, leadership, accountability and stuff, and being able to talk back to guys and be like, no, this is what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. That would, if he starts to build a staff, the dream staff, based on the names we've heard, I highly doubt he gets all three of these guys if he gets the Jets job. If you told me their staff was Steve Wilkes, Clint Kubiak, and Darren Rizzi, that's the best Jets staff on paper in a decade. So, I'm intrigued. I just got to see it. Just like Glenn right now, you got to see it get over the finish line. But if Glenn has serious juice and pull from the Lions and maybe the Broncos or some of the Saints guys, that would show a lot to me. Salah, I don't feel had that. He had got a couple of those guys, but other than that, didn't really. I don't know. I don't feel that was the same pull.
Yeah, I mean, look, Glenn is the lead hire in this situation. It's not sometimes when a GM and a head coach get hired, it feels like the GM is sort of the lead hire. Clearly, it feels like Glenn is the lead hire here, and the Jets are going to give him that juice. And I think hopefully, like you said, he's going to press for the budget he needs, where it's look, I can go pay Wilkes and get him to come here. I can go pay Kubiak and get him to come here. And if the Saints don't pick Rizzi, I think I could get him to come here too. Is he going to get all three? Probably not. Could he get two of the three? While avoiding any names that everyone is oh no, that's going to probably be a disaster. I think potentially, especially if the Jets are going to give him the necessary budget. And it feels like the Jets are going to give him a lot of runway to hopefully shape the org the way he wants. Now, I think we have to figure out exactly how he ends up working with the GM with a guy like Newmark. Clearly, there's a reason that they want to work together. We know Newmark has some history around analytics. We know Glenn feels very strongly about analytics. Could there be an overlap there where they're speaking with one voice and saying, guys, like, let's not have the BS like show staff. Let's actually really build an analytics department and let's really look hard at our personnel and scouting. Because again, people I think sometimes forget that like the front office goes deeper than the top four guys. Like the only five people in the Jets front office weren't Rex Hogan, Chad Alexander, Phil Savage, and Joe Douglas, right? Like there's like 37 people who work in the department across like personnel, scouting, and analytics. Can Glenn help drive to have the juice along with Newmark to be like, look, like
to be fair, Glenn probably worked with 35 or 40% of that staff
seriously
years ago as a scout.
That's how long like this, this stuff has been sticking around in some parts of it. And look, Glenn does have that scouting background, so he's going to have a stronger voice there. And I'm sure that's part of what they like about him. So it's going to be a fascinating 12 to 24 hours. And I think, again, your fear here, if you're a Jet fan, is that there isn't really a plan B, right? It's easy to be on paper, like, we'll just fly McCown in and hire him. It's not always that easy. And McCown might be like, actually, I'm good. Like, we talked, you didn't bring me in for a second interview. I'm just going to stay here. I'll get an opportunity very soon. And I'm not just going to, like, take your plan B offer. Brian Flores, on the other hand, I think would take their plan B offer pretty quickly. But do they turn to him or do they turn to Arthur Smith? Do they turn to Matt Nagy? Do they turn to somebody else that we can't even predict? Plan Bs get a little scary when you get into a tight timeline because the dominoes will fall very quick. If
Glenn it's going to be it'll be Arthur Smith time very quickly, and I can't do that. I can't.
It's every bit of hiring Adam Gase again, like to a T. And I'm sorry we brought up Adam Gase so much over the last 2 days, but I've been saying for a long time that Arthur Smith is Adam Gase 2.0, and that cannot happen. You cannot serve Jet fans Aaron Glenn as like the meal that everyone's been expecting and excited about, and then revoke it and try to sell Arthur Smith. I would like to think that they know that, and they know they need to get this over the line. And I think from a Jets like PR and how the fans are going to accept this perspective, my observations are that for the people who were concerned or upset that we were poking a little bit on Newmark, the feedback was that I'm good with it if Glenn's good with it. I'm good with it if it's part of the Glenn duo. I don't really see anybody being like, well, if we lose Glenn, it's fine as long as we get Newmark. Like all of it, it's not like everyone's like, well, just as long as we get Newmark, it's fine. Whatever coach you put with him. So I think that kind of points to a little bit of that if he's going to be here, it needs to be with Glenn, which is a sort of a reverse dynamic. Doesn't mean it's the wrong dynamic. It doesn't mean it's not going to work. The good news is in either direction, I think we're going to know pretty fast. If you ask me based on this exact moment, it's like 10:15 on Tuesday night. My guess is by Wednesday night, I'll say, we'll have official word that the Jets get it done with Glenn. There's probably a press conference on Friday, maybe Saturday, but probably Friday. I'd say that's like 70%. 75%, honestly, probably like a little higher. I'm being a little Jet fan pessimistic. It's probably 75% or higher. It would take a bizarre late curveball, which it's the Jets. Bizarre late curveballs happen. I think it's fair to expect them to land him at this stage, unless something crazy happens. So we'll close with, because we're going to be probably recording 9 more pods between now and Sunday. We'll close with what is your percentage as of this moment?
I'm going to go higher than that. This is my thing. Like, you don't want to read too much into really anything, right? Because there's things on both sides. You could, look what he did. He did this, or he was in the building for the Jets. Still never even announced that Glenn visited, which means, quote unquote, for them, the visit's not over. The negotiating's still ongoing. I truly think this is a matter of take the night. This is a big decision for Glenn. Like, look, I know he told Rich at the Senior Bowl a couple years ago, this was his dream job, and that's true. And he had a great time. And like, he has waited a while. I mean, I pulled up an article I wrote for you, 2021, when we talked about Aaron Glenn, right? Like, this is not new. This is 4 years. He's been waiting. He was a runner-up last year for a job. Like, he's been waiting. So I don't blame him if he wants to take the night, go back, be with your family, your wife, your kids. He talked about how his wife was really impactful in him getting back into coaching and all these different things. Like, he might want to be like, put my head down on my pillow at home, take a deep breath, and then and then I'll make my decision in the morning. Maybe I'm being too much of like a human being about it. I just think that's a normal thing. Like anyone that's got a huge job offer, that's your dream job, and all of a sudden there's, I don't know, 5-year, $40 million offer on the table. It's like, it's a pretty big, it's a big decision. So I think Newmark, the reason no one's really brought up, it's just because he's just attached to Glenn, and like, not to sound like a dick, but breaking a Lance Newmark to the Jets hiring is not anywhere near as cool as like breaking Aaron Glenn. So I think everyone's kind of trying to like maneuver their way in there. I'll put it at probably 85. I still think it's at 85, 90%. It might even be higher than that. To take what he's playing, to go home after negotiating and visiting, touring facilities, meeting people in the building, doing that interview first, getting the GM hire you want, all this different stuff. It just feels like, and you're assembling a staff that assumes you're going to the Jets. If Garofalo, who's a very respected reporter, I'm not even going to touch on the Schultz stuff. Like, I don't know, man. That unless Woody like totally was like weird today at like the end and was like, hey, like want to come on my helicopter to Trump Tower? Like, I don't, unless like that was going on, I feel like this is more of a formality, and we're looking at like an early morning news cycle's all about the Jets now. It's not about KOC, and it's not about the Patriots hiring Josh McDaniels for the 450th time. It's Woody gets 24 hours of coverage, and then there's no Thursday Night Football, so we're still talking about it on Thursday. There's the presser on Friday. He gets like basically a 72-hour window where it's positive Jets news for Woody Johnson, who's been dealing with sell the team chants and all these different things. Like, that stuff does factor in.
Yep.
And then to get nice runway for Glenn and Lance Newmark to come down to Mobile next week, you kind of start to get your feet on the ground, do your first, tour, your informal thing with the beat and the whole 9 yards down to Mobile. And Lance Newmark's doing what he does, and he's being a scout. And, Aaron Glenn's gets to start to really build out his staff and get into the draft stuff. So I don't know, unless something with offset language or staff budget, or, hey, I really like, I need to pay Clint Kubiak $2 million a year instead of $500K, and like Woody says no, or something. Like, I don't know, Joe. Don't you feel like it's convenient, I'll say, that 3 tweets all come out within a 5-minute stretch about how the Jets are up against the clock? Is it like, hey,
can
we squeeze like an extra year? Can it be 6 for 50 instead of 5 for 40? Can it be, again, is Lance Newmark getting 4 years, not 5? That's what I feel like we're talking about here. And I don't want to be
Jimmy Sexton knows who he's dealing with here.
Yeah, he's bet Woody over a barrel a few times. Giving Joe Douglas the richest GM contract in NFL history to win 30 games. But no, like I said, a long-winded way of saying, like, I'm still 90%. The Jets have shown way too much ass here today from a PR perspective, from what they've had people tweet, what they've put out themselves. You got to be really careful. Like, I know it's the Jets, but they can't be that dumb. Like, you just, maybe they can, but I don't know. They're in really deep here. And unless we get an interview request for Arthur Smith or Brian Flores in the morning, and I know Meigs will do his genie thing, but like that would be the one part where I start to get concerned. It's like, yeah, Glenn's definitely taking the Saints thing, and the Jets are going moving on to second candidates. Then we have a different conversation.
Different kind of podcast we're recording next instead of the emergency.
That podcast, you'll see veins popping out of my neck like I just did 75 minutes of legs.
All right, everybody. Pod is out and up. We'll be back tomorrow at some point in some shape or form. Hang in there. I know it's been a long day in the Discord, a good day in the Discord, but a long day in the Discord, and everyone needs this news to hit. So stay with us at Badlands, and we will talk to you soon.